I have been building production AI systems and automation solutions since 2016, long before ChatGPT and long before the AI hype. And what I realized after almost a decade is that most businesses do not have an AI problem. They actually have a process problem. They don't know which processes to tackle first in their businesses, and they don't know the realistic effort that it takes to implement these use cases. So in this video, I'm going to giving you the exact framework that I use to solve exactly that. It's the very same framework that I use with clients in my paid workshops that I run, and that has recently helped a client to gain more than 15 hours per month back with an ROI of 3x in just 4 months. We will cover how to brainstorm candidates of use cases across every function in your business, how to score them on impact and effort using what I call the Eisenhower metrics for AI, and how to calculate actual ROI so you're working with numbers and not only gut feelings. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly where to start in your business. Hi, my name is Steven, and my mission on this channel is to help you apply AI in a way that truly impacts your business, to automate what is killing your productivity and your profit. So let's jump right in. Let's take a look first of what the goal and the outcomes of this whole process should look like. The goal is to identify and prioritize automation opportunities in your business that will deliver the highest return on the lowest effort. And the outcomes will be a prioritized list of the top automation candidates plotted on an impact to effort matrix, that Eisenhower metrics for AI. Second, we're going to get ROI estimates for each opportunity based on our saved cost and automation potential. And if this is interesting for you, let me know in the comments. I can also do a calculation based on revenue impact. The third one is a clear framework you can use and reuse whenever new process pain points emerge. The first step is the process ideation. And what I'm going to do here is I have a few of example candidates, and I will link down in the description below a bunch of resources for you that you can reuse for free. And they are basically listing some ideas if you are sitting in front of a clean slate, of a blank slate, of which use cases could be interesting for your business. And I'm usually doing this by going through business function by function. And let's start maybe with the marketing one here to give an example. So for marketing use cases, when you talk to the business owner or the head of marketing, then they usually have a pretty good idea of what is the bottleneck in their business. So they usually know what the most painful processes are in their business, what takes the longest, what is the most error prone, or where there is like the highest time investment of their employees or their team members. And if we go into the marketing section here, some use cases, for example, could be to automate personalized lead messages. When a new lead signs up through a form, that you immediately shoot out a personalized message tailored to specifically this lead and in a B2B context, for example, for their business. For agencies, usually when a client reaches out to multiple agencies to work with them, oftentimes the one who gets first through the door is the one who closes the deal. So an immediate and fast personalized response often is very impactful. Another one could be some content analysis for market research. For example, when you do a YouTube channel or you write some blog posts, it might be very interesting to analyze your competitors, what videos, what content they push out, what gaps might exist in their content, so that you have a market analysis ready to go when you want to start ideate or create new content pieces. Another one could be some outreach campaigns, either through cold email outreach or through LinkedIn, or some content ideas that get generated based on the market research before. And what you can do then is basically get your own ideas down and just take a couple of notes on the processes that come to mind. And then you go basically to the next function of your business. And let's just do one more, for example, for sales. And some use cases that might be of interest here would be the automatic lead data enrichment. So when a new lead comes in and books a call with a sales representative, then what these sales reps often need to do is they do some in-depth research on these prospects by going to their LinkedIn profiles, looking what their recent posts and interests were, looking at the company profile if they are associated with a company in the background, and so on. So all of that probably takes like half an hour or so per incoming lead, per sales call. And all of that could be maybe automated. Another one would be automated lead qualification. So if you have a ton of leads coming in and you want to score them or to rank them to only give the highest value leads to your sales reps for direct engagement, then this could be something for you as well. Whatever the pain points are that you want to address in your business, it makes sense to ideate through these together with your department heads or the people who are actually also doing the work, and then getting down a list of the potential candidates. So for the sake of this video, let's just take 3 of them. One that I would take is the automated lead research or automated lead enrichment. So let's call that just lead research. And another one could be, for example, automate proposal generation. And let's take another one from the customer service section. For example, the client comms routing, which is a typical use case for agencies. So in this case, when a client reaches out to the company via the info at email address or the support at email address, then oftentimes there's quite a high volume. So someone needs to triage and assign these emails to the correct department or the correct team member to address the issues or the questions that the customers have. What you want to do next then is, after you ideated some of the use cases in your business and got together a bunch of ideas from a brainstorming session around some common problems, is you want to give them a little bit more structure and organize them. And the way how you're going to do that is through the what I call the Eisenhower metrics for AI. What this metrics basically does is it sorts and ranks all of the use cases on 2 axes. The first one is basically the impact that this use case has in your business. And the second one is the effort that it takes to kind of realize or to implement the actual use case. What happens then is, when you sort them across these axes, is that you get 4 categories similar to the original Eisenhower metrics. The first category that we're going to take a look at is the high impact and low effort category. And this is basically your quick wins, the ones that you want to automate first, the no-brainers, the low-hanging fruit. These are the ones where you have tremendous impact, tremendous time savings, cost savings, or even revenue impact in your business. And the effort to implement them is quite low, maybe in the order of a magnitude of just a few couple of days of development effort. The second category is the kind of high impact and high effort category. And these are basically your strategic bets. So these are use cases that you want to tackle after the quick wins. And these are the ones where you kind of plan a little bit in advance and build out a little bit with more effort, maybe with a bigger development team. And these are your kind of big plays that are worth investment, but that have a little bit of a longer stretch on your ROI until you make that money back. The third category is the low impact, low effort ones. These are kind of nice to have ones that you kind of put in your backlog. It's like the fill-ins and the maybe laters once you covered the top 2 categories. And the last one finally is low impact and high effort. And these are the ones that you definitely want to avoid. You want to skip those. These are time traps and these are just not worth the effort. So what you realize then with this metrics in place is that you basically need two levels of contributors that need to give input into this process. First of all, you have your internal business people, your internal work executors who can estimate how high the impact in the business is. And on the second axis, you need someone who can estimate how big the effort actually is to get this business process into a tech solution. But for now, let's not overcomplicate this and just get into like just a rule of thumb kind of thing. So you do not want at this stage to kind of overthink this and make this more complicated than it has to be. Just like a gut feeling at this point is fair enough. And then in the second framework that we tackle, like this ROI calculation, we will take a deeper look at the actual numbers. But for now, this is basically just a preliminary step to take a look at all of the use cases that you identified and kind of quickly throw them into the different baskets by a rule of thumb to figure out which ones we're going to take a closer look at. Because if you're going to take like half an hour or an hour, maybe even with your teams in a workshop like this one, then you probably might end up with like 10, 20, 30 use cases. And you do not want to do the math for all of these use cases, but only for like the top 5 or 10 best candidates that you think might be worth your time. So what we're going to do now is we take a look at the examples that we gathered before across all of the functions. And again, just go top to bottom and talk with your team or maybe even with a developer or like a consulting agent through these use cases, explain a little bit in depth what this use case could look like, maybe in a minute or two, what the friction point is, where human interaction is maybe necessary, and how complex this might be to implement in your business. So let's take a look at the first use case that we identified in the previous brainstorming session, the lead research one. So for the lead research, when I think about the business impact, it probably has like a medium impact up to a high impact, depending on how many clients or how many leads and prospects you get in every month. But essentially what the lead research contains is like every sales rep needs to do like around half an hour or so of research prior to an in-depth sales call with that prospect. So it probably takes like half an hour. And if we're going to do this often enough, then there might be quite a big impact for this particular use case. And in terms of the effort, so we have it like in the high impact camp now. In terms of the effort, it's fairly reasonably short to automate this. There's not a lot of human touch points involved. The lead comes in, maybe submits their data through a form or something like that, or registers for a lead magnet, or even like books a call, whatever it is in your business that qualifies a lead to do the research for them. And then basically an automation could run on its own and use the data, for example, from the email address. Maybe with the domain, there is a website linked to this particular domain, and a LinkedIn profile can be identified as well. So the effort for this is, I would say, quite low compared also to the impact that this makes of saving like half an hour or so per lead research for that sales rep. The second one is the automate proposal generation. So for this one, I would say the use case behind that, to give you a little bit of context, is for agency work, typically after you come out of a sales call and you talked about the pain points and the potential solutions for a client, is you want to send them over a proposal for the work together. So this is like post-sales call and pre-close deal. And what this involves usually is kind of like summarizing the bullet points of the sales call, what was discussed, and pack this into a nicely formatted, usually like a templatized proposal. And this is something where I would say there's also quite a high impact, because if you can replicate this really consistent across every single client in a very high quality, and you can automate away a lot of the work that the sales rep needs to do post the sales call to manually go through that, take notes, kind of organize and structure them and put them into nice words, that can be quite of a big time saver as well. And is like a use case that I automated in my own agency as well. And regarding the effort, it's also like a fairly standardizable process. So if you have a good SOP in place for that, which is, by the way, the prerequisite for all of that. And also let me know in the comments if that is something interesting for you, if I should do a video on SOP generation and SOP best practices as a precursor for actual automation work. But in this case, like this is quite a low effort as well, I would say. If you have, again, like a good SOP in place, you have a good template in place, and the prerequisites you do already have in place, like good call recording practices, like all of the calls need to be recorded and transcribed in order for that to work. But at the bottom line, it's quite a low effort, high impact use case as well. And then the last one is the client comms routing. So as I said in this one, this is kind of whenever an email comes in, it needs to be triaged and it needs to be assigned to the correct person. I would say this is probably the easiest of the use cases to implement. So it's probably going to be somewhere in this column. And in terms of the impact, I would probably say it's like definitely a lower impact use case than the first two, because like someone sitting down and putting an email into the right basket is like just a couple of minutes of effort, I would say. And it also not really requires a lot of training or skill in advance for this job to be done. However, depending again on the volume, this could be quite of a higher impact depending on how many requests you get from your clients. Probably more interesting for an e-com business than like a professional service business. And you basically go through all of the use cases that you identified, that you ideated on the left. You go through all of them and assign them to this metrics. And then you get a pretty good overview of each of these categories and each of the use cases. And as I said before, the ones that you want to start with is definitely the quick wins. And then the strategic bets with this empty in our example. And then the nice to haves ones here. And what we're going to do now is we will take these use cases and just put them into our ROI sheet. So here we got our AI and automation ROI process audit sheet. And I'm going to walk you through quickly how this sheet works. And then we will use the identified use cases from the previous example to fill in the sheet. And I can show you how this works. So first of all, what you're going to put in is like a name of this process that you can identify later what process you were doing the math for. Then you put in a short description and a trigger, like what is the triggering factor for this process in your business to start. You want to put in the number of times, the frequency, how often this occurs every month and how long it takes. And also how many people are involved in the process. This is also a good indicator of like how many handoffs are happening in this process and how difficult it might be to pass data in between people, or even how much friction it would take out by automating some of the steps. Their average salary, so if there are multiple people involved, just take a rough average salary per hour across these people. And the risk of error and the pain score for this particular process. So how likely is it that you get some quality issues or some human mistakes in this process by human execution, and how painful it is to have this process manually done in your business. Then you want to put in a number of how high the automation potential is for this particular use case. As I said before, for some examples, you may be able to automate like 80 to 100% of a particular use case. In other examples, it may just be like 10, 20, or even 0%. So you want to get that number down here roughly. And then what the sheet does is it automatically calculates the monthly cost in terms of time, dollars, and it calculates a weighted opportunity score across all of these factors that you put in. And lastly, you want to jot down 1 or 2 measurable KPIs, because what is super important is like you have like a baseline established before automation, that you can track what the process looks like and how it improved after you automated this process. This is super important to kind of do a retrospective on your projects and to see how well they worked essentially. All right, so let's jump in and fill the sheet from our previous use cases. And the first one that we're going to take a look at is the lead research use case. So what happens in this case is, again, the sales rep does some research on the LinkedIn profile and the website of the lead that has booked a call. And what triggers the process is probably that the sales call gets booked with a sales rep. How often this occurs heavily depends on the business, of course, but let's assume we're going to tackle this like 30 times a month. And the time this actually takes per execution, let's ballpark that at 45 minutes. There is one person involved, which is the sales rep, and the average salary might be, say, like something like $60 an hour. The likelihood of errors is, I would consider, rather low, and the pain score for this process is quite high because it's a lot of manual work. You need to go through all the sources, write them together in maybe like a short report into your CRM. So this is something sales reps don't want to waste time with. And the automation potential, as I said, again, quite high on this one. So let's put 100% in there. And the second use case that we got was the proposal generation. So in that one, the sales call needs to be analyzed and put into like a clean templatized proposal format. And what triggers that is a successful sales call with a qualified lead, or maybe even a renewal of an existing customer into a new product or service. The time this occurs, let's put down like 20 times a month. And the proposal generation, let's say, takes around 60 minutes per proposal. There are two people involved, maybe like a project manager and or a developer with some expertise on how much the actual implementation of a process or product takes, and the sales representative. The average hourly rate maybe $80, and the likelihood of errors might be medium because a lot of data has to be manually put into the template, into the proposal, handwritten text, and so on. There is like quite a good likelihood of manual errors. Pain score, let's put that down as 3. And automation potential, probably around 50, 70, 80%, depends on the company. So let's go a little bit more conservative here. And the third one that we got was the client comms routing, where manual routing of incoming emails happens to a specific department or employee or team member. And the trigger is like an incoming email to an info ad or support ad email. From a frequency perspective, let's say this happens quite often. So there are about 300 emails that come in every month. And it takes about 5 minutes to read, understand the email, maybe get some context on the client, and then route that to the correct person who can handle that. Probably 2 people involved. Again, the person who actually executes the triage, and maybe another person who they need to circle back to ask for additional information and context. Hourly salary is probably a bit lower, so let's ballpark that at $40 an hour. And the error risk, I would consider, is quite low. For the pain score, let's put down like a 4. This is like a very manual process, which could be easily automated. And for the automation potential, let's put that down to 75% because there might be quite a few edge cases where a human needs to take a look at the specific case. All right, so let's fill in actually the numbers to get the math down for that. And the hours that each manual process takes per month is in this column here. And then you multiply that with the average dollar cost per hour to get like the monthly cost for that particular use case. And then you get a weighted opportunity score. And finally, it would be super helpful to write down a bunch of measurable KPIs for the use cases as well. So for the first one, for the lead research one, some good metrics that we want to track here maybe are the pre-call prep time of the sales rep, and potentially also the first call to conversation rate. Because the better the sales rep is prepped for that particular call, for that particular person, the better might be the conversion rate of that sales call. Then for the proposal generation, something interesting here could be like the proposal to send time and the win rate. Why these two? Obviously, because like the faster after a sales call you send out the proposal to the client, the better it is with the get through the door example compared to your competitors. And the better the proposal, the more personalized, the more crafted this proposal is, the better might be the win rate as well. And for the last one, for the client comms routing, something that could be relevant here would be the time of assignment between the incoming email to the correct person, something you might want to track. And the other one is like the compliance internally regarding your client response service level agreement. Like when you have, for example, a 24-hour SLA with a client that you need to respond to their tickets, to their requests, then you may want to track how well you are complying to this particular commitment to your client. As a next step, then we're going to go and take a look at the ROI audit for these processes. So as you can see here in the last column, we got the score down. And if you collect like 10 to 20 or so use cases for your business, you get probably quite a good variance of opportunity scores here. So what you're going to do then next is you're going to pick the best processes or the processes that seem most attractive to you. So let's just take the lead research one and the proposal generation for the sake of this example. And what the sheet will do is it will automatically fill out a bunch of data for you from the calculations that we did before. In a nutshell, you can see again like how many hours you're gonna save per month, how many dollars you will save for this particular use case if you can automate it to the level of the percentage that you indicated before, and how much that is on an annual level. And then what you do internally again is like you want to kind of ballpark a rough estimate of what it would be worth it for you to tackle this use case, to implement that, to solve that problem. And it's a good idea to put like a min budget and a max budget in there so that you have quite a bit of a range when you get an offer from an agency or so, that you're not fixed on a particular number, but that you have a little bit of wiggle room. So for the first example, the lead research, let's just take something down like it would be a good minimum budget of $1,600 to solve that problem, up to say $3,200. And for the proposal generation, that might be interesting for around $1,100 all the way up to like $2,500. And it's just fictive numbers that I make up here. And then what you can see is that when you kind of fulfill these numbers, you will get a calculated ROI for these use cases in total if you solve all of them. That's the reason why I said in the beginning, just pick the most interesting ones that you actually want to be tackling. So at a minimum budget, the estimated cost range to solve these are $2,700, and the payback period in month, given the numbers that you put in with the salary and the effort and so on, the payback period would be in only about 1.5 or 1.3 month. And for 1 year, that would mean you would make a whopping 856% of ROI just in the first year. And for the maximum budget, so for the most expensive case, if you're maxing out your investment, then the estimated cost range would be $5,700 with a payback period of even only 2.7 months. And that is still within the first year a 353% ROI. And here at the bottom, finally, you can see also the ROI map for 12 months, how this plays out in terms of monthly and cumulative savings, and the ROI at the two budget levels, so that you get a little bit of an overview how your investment plays out. And in the last tab, you will find a summary for the whole calculation and the whole exercise, which processes were selected. So we selected the lead research and proposal generation use cases. The total monthly hours saved are 33. And we're going to save a total of $2,150 annually, $25,800. And again, your budget ranges, the payback periods, and the total ROI. And if you want to, even as a little nicely formatted text. So let's summarize quickly to which point we got so far with this whole framework and this whole process. So first of all, we actually got to ideate some of the problems by business function, the use cases that were most interesting in your business for automation, some that you had an idea of like these could be a good pain point to address. In the second step, we put them into the Eisenhower metrics for AI to kind of identify what the most interesting use cases are and in which order to address them. And then finally, we got some numbers into every single one of these use cases that we identified to kind of prioritize and rank and get some real financial metrics behind them, which are the most viable processes to tackle for automation or AI enhancement in your business. And one final thing that I want to recommend to you is the way how you do this. After the brainstorming session that you did with your team, is you want to basically assign one process owner for each process. And this process owner has a bunch of responsibilities. So for each process, they go actually and add this process to the spreadsheet. So they will go into the business, into their team members if you have, and interview them to get and fill the data into the sheet. And who should they actually interview? So they should actually interview the person who is actually doing the work and or the manager's estimate. They should interview anyone who handles exceptions or edge cases for this particular case. So to whom this gets escalated in case the team member who first tackles it and gives the first shot at it doesn't know what to do. Some people at handoff points between departments or between teams. Something that's super interesting to understand what the friction points are there. And you may also want to use some time tracking data to analyze how much time actually gets spent on the task rather than some estimates on idealized thoughts or memories. Which brings us to the common pitfalls. Some common pitfalls are underestimating the time. That's the reason why I recommended that you actually take time tracking if you have. But if you just estimate like, oh, this is just a bunch of minutes, but it happens like 50 times a month, that will quickly sum up. What you also might want to think about is that you need to think about rework or error correction or follow-ups. So not only the actual execution of the task, but for example, the comms assignment, like when you assign this to the wrong person, the back and forth internally that happens then based on this wrong assignment is also something you want to take into consideration. Then only counting active time is another pitfall. Like when you wait for someone responses, when you need to make a phone call, when you context switch between works, this is all between tasks. This is all lost time that you may also want to consider for the calculation. Then also consider that manager estimates are often 30 to 50% lower than the reality. That's why I said before, interview who is actually doing the work. And the last pitfall is that assuming always the best case scenario instead of the typical execution time. So just think about what the actual duration is in contrast to the best case scenario. And once you got the numbers down into the ROI estimation spreadsheet, you're probably better prepared than 99% of the other businesses to pick the correct or the best AI tools and to actually automate the processes that are not only the highest pain points in your business, but that also have the highest financial impact on your business. And once you got these down, you basically have three choices to proceed from here. The first one is you gonna DIY the process automation with some tutorials like on my channel that I will pump out soon. The second option is you can hand this to your internal dev team if you have experienced people in your org to automate that for you. And the third option is, of course, to reach out to an AI and automation agency like mine to get some expert input on these use cases, on the effort estimates, and also to get some support with pretty quick implementation so that you can max your ROI even further. All right, so if this was interesting to you, check down the links in the description. I will put a Google Sheet template for the process ideation and, of course, the ROI calculation spreadsheet into the links below. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck in automating your highest impact use cases in your business.